A very good evening, friends. My name is Dhanunjay Reddy, and today we are with one more topic on international relations, and that is the concept of power. Note that in international relations, particularly the section paper 2, section A of PSIR, we started with the fifth topic, that is theories of international relations, and we have successfully completed all the theories in international relations. So this is the sixth unit of section A paper 2 of PSIR, and this is one subsection of that sixth unit, that is the concepts of power and the power and associated issues. So we are going to start the next chapter, that is the sixth chapter. We will be continuing with this discussion in the coming days. So before going into that, the slides that were there here is this book. I already said while we are discussing the theories, complex interdependence theory, right, of the neoliberals. So Robert Keohane and Joseph Nye, these are the neoliberals who said that the world is complex interdependent today. So they have written a book in their book called Power and Interdependence. They are saying this. So as such, these two scholars will be speaking something about the power in international relations. And then there is one more book which was written by Paul Kennedy, and the book is The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers. So this is the book which he says why great powers has risen and fallen over a period of time. So this was the book we'll be discussing about Paul Kennedy in this discussion. The next one is again this man Joseph Nye, who has written a book called Soft Power. In this book, he exclusively dealt about soft power, and this is very important topic from the perspective of examination. As far as examination is considered, this is very important. So we'll be discussing about what is soft power and what is Joseph Nye's concept of soft power as such, and we'll be taking the insights from this book itself. So what is he is saying in this book? The means to success in world politics. If you want to be successful in world politics, then what is the means as for Joseph Nye? It is soft power. So that is what the three books are. All these three scholars today we are going to discuss because they are more or less related to the concept of power. So this is what the first slide is all about. Now let us move internally. Key concepts in international relations. This is the sixth unit of paper 2. That is what I said. Sixth unit of paper 2. What are the subsections in this? If you look at the syllabus, I have this. This is just syllabus I have written. Syllabus I have written here. One is the national interest, and then security and power. The third one is balance of power and deterrence, and then transnational actors, collective security, world capitalistic economy, and globalization. These are the topics. So remember the topics very clearly. First one is national interest, national security, power, balance of power, deterrence, transnational actors, collective security, world capitalistic economy, and globalization. And before going into discuss all this, let me also give you a clear clarification or idea that whatever the theories that we are doing, these are just concepts in international relations. They are the elements which are playing in international relations, like national interest is the ultimate interest of the countries, or collective security or national security is the ultimate interest of the countries, and power after power we discussed all this. Balance of power we discussed. Deterrence, yes, it comes to, in this discussion. Transnational actors, collective security, these are the concepts in interview. If you understand these concepts, then what we can understand how the world is operating, right? How the world system is operating as such. So this is why this topic is here. And before going into these topics very clearly, let me tell you that as far as these concepts are considered, we rely entirely on the theories that we discussed. So if you want to understand international relations per se from the perspective of the next discussions, definitely the background is theories. So if you have not seen the theories, I would request you to go and watch the theories, so it might be helpful to you to understand the coming concepts. All those theories, the 10 lectures that I have did, They are very important to understand the rest of the paper too. So almost 15 topics were dependent on those 10 lectures. 15 units in PSIR paper 2 are related to those 10 chapters, 10 classes. So better go watch the theories and then come here, because whatever we take, whenever we are discussing power, I already said when we are discussing theories, realist will have one perspective of power, liberals will have one perspective of power, Marxists will have one perspective of power. The same thing applies for national interest. Liberals has one concept to secure national interest, realists have other concept, Marxists have other concept. And we also discuss feminist world structures theory by Immanuel Wallerstein. So these are some concepts which we are discussed. World systems theory by Wallerstein, and then there is systems theory of Martin Kepler also. We discussed, that was our last lecture. So if you understand those theories very clearly, we are going to use this. So first thing first, have a very clear clarity on the theories that we discussed so far. So this is what I wanted to say, because the rest will be following those theories. So we are starting with the so-called power, and then we will be moving to balance of power. Then I will be moving to deterrence, and then I will be going to national interest, because they are interlinked in this way. And then I will be telling about security and collective security. And then we will be discussing transnational actors and the rest of the things, globalization and everything, right? So first thing, we will be starting with power here, as they have given power. That is the today's discussion. I think so far it is clear. Now, in power, what are the subtopics that we are going to discuss? We will see what is concept of power as such, and what are the elements of power, what makes one to be powerful, or what constitutes one to say that it is power. So what are the elements, and what are the determinants of power? We will see what is the difference between elements and determinants, and what are the measurements of power, how to measure power. There will be some powers which we call superpowers, great powers, small powers, middle powers. What is the measurement or tool to measure? Then there is one more topic called power polarity thesis. This is one topic that we have to discuss. And there is one more concept called types of power, and then management of power. In management of power, we come across two things called balance of power and collective security. These two are the tools to manage the power in international politics. So if you look at the topic, that is balance of power and collective security, they are related to power, because they are the management of power in international politics can be done through balance of power, or it can be done through collective security. So why we have to understand power? Because entire international relations, I said the theory of international relations or the schools of international relations are focusing on establishing peace and avoiding war after war. So in order to avoid war and establish peace, we have to study the basic element that is called power. Power is the ultimate thing which is going to determine the relations in international politics. And power not only in international relations, but personally also in our lives also, we aspire to have more and more power. So that is ultimately the desire of human beings, and so is the desire of the nations across the globe. So we have to understand with the basic concept of power and what are the associated issues. I repeat, in this session we are going to discuss these things, that is what is concept of power, what are the elements of power, what are the determinants of power, how we can measure power, what are the types of powers, and what is polarity thesis, and how to manage power. In the management of power, we'll be moving to next related topic, that is called balance of power and collective security, because they are two theorems or two theoretical frameworks through which you can manage the power. So this is what the thing is. And then first thing first, I said concept of power in international relations. What is this concept of power in international relations? In general, we call a man or a person powerful when he has the capacity to influence others. When someone has the capacity, look around yourself. If we call only one person, we call some persons only those persons who are powerful if they have the influence or the capacity to influence others. They should possess that capacity. Otherwise, we will not call everyone as powerful, right? Look at the MLAs, they has the capacity to influence, right? Look at the police, because police has power which was given by the law. That is why we say they are powerful positions. Huh? That is why this concept applies the same thing to international relations also. So what is power? Power in general means the capacity to influence others. It may be person, it may be an individual, or it may be a state, or it may be a group of states. So that is called power. This is layman's definition of power. Power is the central concept of politics, right? Because politics always rotates around power, yet it is the most contested concept. Power is the central concept of politics. Either it is domestic politics or international politics, either it is individual politics or group politics. Everyone will be aspiring for power. It is the most central theme of international politics. Everything revolves around power, but still it is the most contested. Why it is contested? Because every scholar has a different opinion, or every school has a different opinion about power. Realist has one perspective of power that is contested by liberals. Liberals has proposed one concept of power which was contested again by Marxists. Marxists has proposed one context of power which was criticized by critical schools like Frankfurt School or neo-Marxists. These general theories are again criticized or contested by feminist scholars, social constructivist scholars. These are what we discussed in theories of international relations. So, though it forms the central of the axis, or it forms the axis of the wheel of international politics, still it is the most contested topic, because every school propounded with its own way of looking at the concept of power. So I think it is clear. Out of all schools that we studied, realism gives much primacy to power. If there is one school which gives more attention, or which concentrates its entire theory on power, that is realism. That is what we have to understand. While studying realism, we said, Hans J. Magento, the father of classical liberalism, or liberalism as such, has said that power is the means and power is the end. If you look at Kenneth Walls, the neo-realist, or John Mearsheimer, Kenneth Walls belongs to the defensive school, John Mearsheimer, the offensive school. Both say that yes, power is important, but they differ in how much power one should have. But the central theme of the discussion of realists as such is around the power. But the differential between offensive and defensive lies only on what extent that we should have power. But the central underlying theme is power for realists as such. So if there is one school which has given entire focus, or which has studied their theory entirely on basis of power, that is only the realist school. So out of all the skill, realism gave much importance to the concept of, or primacy to power. And we know this Morgenthau said that international politics is struggle for power. Just we said this is not Morgan, this is Morgenthau. Morgenthau, he said that Morgenthau said that international politics is struggle for power. International politics is power is the means and power is the end. While we are discussing classical realism, he said that Morgenthau said that power has dual nature. That is, every state, final objective of every state in international politics is to acquire power. And what is the tool that they use? They use power. So power is the means to acquire more power. So power after power is the ultimate goal of international politics as per Hans Morgenthau. So this is what I said. Realist focus more on materialistic power, which means military power. Materialistic power means hard power or the military power, right? Then there is another school like social constructivist school. We discussed about this. They say that power is not just military power, but you should have cultural power, you should have identity, you should have discourses, you should have ideologies, norms. So for them, it is not just military power. Your culture, say for example, Indian culture inspires, or it will have some effect on the following, on the rest of the country. Democratic values will have certain functions or certain influence to alter the decisions of other countries. Say, for example, if China is approaching Nepal or India is approaching Nepal, depending upon the culture of the country, Nepal's approach will be there, right? So is with other countries. So what they say, just you are focusing on the concept of power. militaristic power or materialistic power. So it is not justifying the concept of power as such. There are many other elements which determines your power, not only just your capability to wage wars. They are cultural capabilities, the norms that you apply, the law that you follow, whether you are democratic country or authoritarian country. So these are the things which determine or which influence your power. So this is as per the various theories. That is why I said, it is contested school. Why? Because everyone has given their own way of understanding the concept of power in international relations. So this is what the power is. I said, what is power? Power is the capacity to influence, and it is the central theme of international politics. That it is the most contested topic because every school has given their own perception of power in international politics. As far as this next topic goes, that is, what are the elements of power? Elements are potential elements. Potential resources. You can say that elements are potential resources to give you power. Say, for example, compare this with a human being. When we call it a human being is powerful, when he is having, say, for example, when he is having money in today's world, we call him powerful. When he is in politics or political affiliations, then we will call him powerful. And then when he has certain, say, for example, we say that in India, as far as India goes, if he has some Group 1 job or UPSC jobs, then we call him as powerful. So whenever these three things are there, then we call a human being as powerful. So these are the elements which determine the capacity, or these are the potential resources which determine or which form the elements of power of human beings. So is the case with international relations. So what are the potential resources which make a country to be powerful? So elements are those potential resources which are available for a country to become powerful. I hope you understood what are elements of power. So basically this is very simple. As we have understood like this, see in that context only, no need to explain again each and everything. When they ask this question, you write on generalistic perspective, elements of power. First thing, start with this. Look at Indian, then you can do everything. One is territory. Yes, the more territory you have, the more powerful you be. Let us look at Russia, the erstwhile USSR, India, China, USA, Canada. All these are powerful because they have big territories, and territories, big territories always acts as a source for resources, right? That is what the concept is. Geographically, they make good resources. As a result, they will have resource base. The moment they are having resources base, what are those resources? They form the economic base of the country. As such, territory is very important. Second thing, not only territory, the location of the country is very important. For example, India, if it has situated away from China, it would have been, the relation would have been somewhat different. Now see, USA, why USA was more secure? Because it was surrounded by sea on all sides, except on north and south. They have Canada and Mexico, but still those countries are very democratic countries, unlike West Asian countries or unlike Southeast Asian countries or South Asian countries. So location, territory, geographical extent is one factor which plays vital role. At the same time, your location, whether you are located, whom you are surrounded with, right? That is also one of the most important thing. And why USA is still considered as powerful today? Because no one has waged a direct war in USA by going and waging a war inside USA. If you look at the rest of the world, apart from USA or North America, definitely every power in yesteryears, they had wars on their territory. USA never had their any war on their territory. They waged wars outside their territory because they are very far away geographically. So it gives a geographical edge or strategic edge in international politics. So location is one of the vital factor. Except that Pearl Harbor incident, none of the countries has uh, really went and hit USA. If there was one country which has ingressed, or one organization which has ingressed into US and had demolished the World Trade Organizations, the World Trade Centers, sorry. those World Trade Centers, then that was the Taliban, right? So these are the elements. Apart from these two incidents, Pearl Harbor incident and the Taliban incident, no one has touched USA so far. Why? Because they have territory, they have location. Because of the largest territory, geographically they have certain economic resources. When there are economic resources, they make industrial base. The more industrial base you have, the more power you will have, because you'll have more exports, less imports. As a result, your forex resources are going to increase. The moment you are having economic power, you are going to control, like China, definitely. Then technological power. Today, technological power is playing a very vital role. The countries who have technology is the countries who are leading. This is ultimately again a concept which can be understood very clearly from our basic knowledge, because say for example, even to fight the climate change or to be ready, say for example, even COVID-19, the countries which has technology, which can do research and which can produce vaccines are the best states, because they are forming good alliances with the rest of the world. Next, location, I said. Demography. What was your population, whether it was aged population or it was young population or it was working population, is it literates or is it illiterates, are they conscious about their rights? So these are the factors which again play a very vital role. And armed forces, how strong is your armed forces? Navy, it may be navy, it may be army, or it may be air force. Whatever the armed forces are there, how far your armed force is, how far your military strength is, then that also determines your elements. And leadership, a capable leadership is always vital, because leadership plays a very crucial role in international politics. Whether it depends whether it is Nehru who is playing a vital role at the top of a page, or it is Modi who is at the top of a page. So these are the elements of power. You can write it on our own with your knowledge. So these, what I said, these are the potential resources. You can type it here as resources. What are the resources? Just to remember this, and that will be done. Now, even though there might be some countries who which has this resources, but still they might not be converting into the power. They might not convert these resources into power because they do not have that capability. So here comes the next topic called determinants of power. It is same like elements of power. Elements of power are potential elements or potential resources. When a country is able to use the elements, it becomes a determinant, right? I have, say for example, good territory, or I have armed force. If I am able to use my armed force to control my sovereignty or to ensure my sovereignty and territorial integrity, then that becomes the determinant of power, because this is going to determine what your role is in international politics, or how countries are going to perceive your country in international politics. They are determinants because they are determining. Even though you have resources, it is the determining capability, or it is the capability to turn those elements into actual use, which determines the potential of a country at the global level. So that is what the difference is. These are like resources. Elements are like resources, they are there. And then determinants, these are put into practice. The moment you keep elements into practice and convert them towards power, then that becomes a determinant, because they are going to determine how far a nation is powerful, right? So it is same like elements of power. Elements of power I discussed, it is the potential elements or potential resources. When a country is able to use the elements, it becomes a determinant. Example, for example, see this Middle East country has resources, good resources in the form of oil resources, gas resources, but still they were unable to control or to convert those elements into determinants. It has not changed into a determinant. So there is always a conflict in Middle East. One or the other place of Middle East is always in news because of the conflicts. Why? They have not used these elements to convert into determinants. So I think you are perfect with the two differences, elements and determinants, right? So more or less you will write the same thing when they ask about determinants. The only difference is how far these elements has turned out to be a determinant that you have to give special emphasis. I think you are clear so far. Elements and determinants. Now we are moving to next thing in power. That is, I discussed elements. I discussed what is power, why it is contested topic, what are the elements of power, what are the determinants of power. Now, how many types of power are there? Generally, power is classified into five types. One is the hard power. The second one is soft power. Third one is smart power. Fourth one is sharp power. Fifth one is fast power. We'll discuss what is the difference between each and everything. For now, remember these are the five things. Start with types of power, hard power. I said hard power is the militaristic power or the materialistic power. What is this military power? You give either carrot and stick policy. Give carrot, if it is mending its ways, fine. If it is not mending, then bend with the stick, right? That is carrot and stick policy. So what is this carrot? You give economic incentives, then that is carrot. If they are not going to listen, go and attack militarily. So that is stick. So it is the view of realist. If you look at realist perspective, like John Mearsheimer, Morgenthau, then definitely they look at hard power, militaristic power, power after power, because it is military power which is the ultimate determining factor for these persons I discussed. So they focus entirely on the militaristic power. They don't believe in other powers like cultural power, economic power. This we discussed when we are discussing the theories very detailed. So this is hard power. First thing. Next is soft power. What is this soft power? As per social constructivists, power is not just militaristic power, it is cultural and ideological power, because culture and ideology is what is going to reinforce your hegemony. Primarily, it is promoted by liberals because liberals believe in economic interdependence, social interdependence, democratic peace theories. So, if you look at the schools of neorealism, more or less they are promoting the culture, more or less they are promoting the ideology. Then the famous propounder of soft power in international relations is Mr. Joseph Nye. Remember the two books in the first slide, right? The soft power. He has written a book on soft power. So Joseph Nye is the person who applied the concept of soft power to the international relations. And then there is one more thing called smart power. What is this smart power? If a country is capable of using hard power and the soft power as per the situations, then that is called smart power. You will be having smart, you will be saying a country as smart whenever it knows when to use hard power, when to use soft power. It should have both, and it should use or it should exercise those power which is opted for the time and space whenever it is required. So that is what is smart power. I think you understood. Now we'll be discussing, as far as hard power is concerned, I think you are very clear, military, carrot and stick. Now we'll be discussing some more about soft power because there is a book written by Joseph Nye in international politics. This is also an important area where questions will be asked in UPSC. Generally, soft power was a concept which was given by Gramsci. In paper 1, we'll study about Gramsci, right? Theories of Western thinkers, right? Gramsci, what he did, he said, he described soft power as power of consent. He says generally, the European powers or the Western powers are able to exercise their hegemony even today, not just because of the economy. Because Gramsci said Marxist theories like Karl Marx, they were very limited in their approach, because Karl Marx said everything is based on economy, the rest is superstructure, economy is the base. So if you are economically strong, then definitely superstructure is going to be strong as per Marx. What this Gramsci said, no, what Marx said is wrong. It is not just the economic base. The base is not just economic, it is culture plus economy plus your ideology, which is playing a very vital role in determining your hegemony. That is why Gramsci says, counters Karl Marx, saying that Marx said that communist revolution is inevitable at one point of time, but so far, even after 200 years, no country has witnessed communist revolution. Right? Why? He says that the West were successful, or the European powers, capitalists were very successful in showing that their ideology is the best ideology because they have got the consent from the people. So this was a concept which was given by Gramsci in domestic politics or in politics as such. So if they are soft power, so the roots are in Gramsci's thinking, and then Gramsci says soft power is invisible, which means economic power is visible, military power is visible. Soft power, it is invisible. It operates invisible in the form of culture, it's a form of relations that exist between human beings, society, people to people, and it is non-coercive power. Military power is coercive. This is not coercive power. And this was a concept which was given by bourgeoisie class or the capitalist class. That was our telling. Capitalists were very brilliant and they have come out with some ideologies which has given or which has convinced people and which has made people to give their consent. Because of this ideology they were able to establish hegemony, because soft power was the concept of or is the concept of bourgeoisie class. So this is what Gramsci has confined or Gramsci has stated earlier as far as soft power is concerned. Now this man Joseph Nye comes and applies the same principle to the international politics of soft power. So in international politics, Joseph Nye is the person who started the debate of soft power at the international level. Right? That is why with a book he has written. Now what is the meaning and what are the tools of soft power? Soft power is power of persuasion or the power to gain consent. That is what I said. And what are the tools or what does it require? It requires leadership, right? A good leader can pursue its people, and he can pursue the global countries also. Leadership is building correlations with like-minded countries. What is leadership in international relations? It is you should be enough capable, you should be in a position to make good relations with those countries which are like-minded like your country. So that is leadership. So soft power requires leadership capabilities. And what are the tools of soft power? The culture, right? The ideology, the norms, the law that act as soft power. Culture. Indian culture. Indian culture is very old culture. Indian civilization is very old. That is why whenever we are going towards Southeast Asian countries where our we had certain cultural linkages, we always speak in terms of culture, not just militarily, or we don't speak much on military, or we don't speak much in economic terms. We speak on cultural terms as for countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, these countries, Nepal, Bhutan, these countries are considered. We speak in the form of culture. So culture is one reinforcing element of soft power. And what is your ideology? What do you mean by ideology? Whether you are a capitalist ideology, liberal ideology, non-liberal ideology, realist ideology, that is also plays a very important role. Now, what are the norms or what is the laws that you follow? Laws, for example, say if you are following democracy, definitely you will be more welcome. If you are authoritative like North Korea, definitely you will be more confined to your country only. So these are the soft power tools. Joseph Nye concept of soft power means it is the ability to develop consent. It is the ability to power of persuasion or ability to develop consent. This is what we discussed. So the meaning is consent, to develop consent is soft power. It is the ability to develop consent. This is the power of persuasion. Right? What are the tools I said? You might be clear now. Why Joseph Nye has written a book called Soft Power? What was the context? Now understand this context, because whenever we are discussing Morgenthau, he has come out with a thing called classical realism, and at that point of time we discussed why this man has come out and gave classical realism. What was the essential for Morgenthau? Because he wanted to alert the leaders of USA at that point of time, particularly Roosevelt, right? We discussed this. Roosevelt, he was thinking, even after the Second World War, these leaders of USA, they were thinking on liberal world order, which was not working. So that was making the country to go into crisis, because they were very cautious. These intellectuals, they were very cautious, and they said that, President, if you are following the liberal ideas, then you are going to make USA to receive the same fate that Britain or the Western European countries have got in Second World War. So that is why he came and he said that, okay, I am giving a scientific view of realism. So that was the context of Morgenthau. The same context, Joseph Nye, I said international politics is a theory which was dominated by USA, right? You know the theory. Why I said? We discussed this, why USA was more dominant, or why US scholars were more dominant in international politics. So the context of Joseph Nye is also an American. So what that his context is to say to Europe, USA's leaders what type of power USA should possess after the end of Cold War in 1990s, particularly, right? After the end of Cold Wars, 1989, Cold War was ended. 1991, USSR was integrated. So post Cold War, what type of policies? Till Cold War, USA focused on military capability. USA and USSR were in a race of arms production. Nuclear arms race was continued. But Joseph Nye observed after the end of the Cold War, if is it okay for the country like America to go for military power, or should it change its approach, recalibrates its approach? Then definitely Joseph Nye realized that hard power is no more the means or no more the tool that USA should pursue in international politics, and that is the reason why he came out with soft power. And he tells very clearly why a nation should not go, particularly a nation like USA, should not go after hard power after the end of Cold War. According to Joseph Nye, USA should rely more on soft power rather than hard power. He said this. We'll see why he said so, why he recommends so. The nature of post-Cold War world. If you look at the world order after the post-Cold War, it was changed. It was no more bipolar. Cold War was a bipolar world, right? There were two powers. But after the end of Cold War, you look at the international world order. Economic liberalization has happened. Every country opened their gates to Washington Consensus that we discussed. So there was a theory, or there was a new nature that is called complex interdependence nature among the countries. The countries were no more just confined to one aspect. They were complex interdependence. This theory, again, complex interdependence theory of liberals, right? Connect it there. So, as a neoliberal, he says that Joseph Nye and Robert Keohane, Power and Interdependence, their book, they have said that the countries after the Cold War, the relationship between the countries can be explained only with one term called complex interdependence. They were not just dependent on in terms of power; they were also dependent on terms of economy, on terms of laws, on terms of people-to-people relations, not just state-to-state relations, but the business-to-business relations are playing a vital role. People-to-people relations are playing a vital role. So it was a complex interdependent. We have moved from the billion ball model to the cobweb model. This is what we discussed, and this is what the nature of the world is after post Cold War. So Joseph Nye observed this, and he said that Robert Robert Keohane and Joseph Nye, they gave the concept of complex interdependence that we discussed in his book. This was also a photo in the first slide. It means that countries have become too much interdependent. Every country is dependent on other country in various means. In such a situation, it is very hard, or it is very difficult to use hard power. And the utility of hard power in complex interdependence world is going to get reduced. Hence, there should be more reliability on soft power. Why this hard power gets declined? Because excessive reliance on hard power will be counterproductive. So what they say, in a world of complex interdependence, you cannot assure, or hard power is not going to assure you success, because say for example USA and China, why they are not going to war? The reason is there is complex interdependence. The relationship of USA and China is not just the military tensions, but economy is one factor which is playing a very vital role between these two countries. As a result, the countries are well aware that if you are going to wage a war, this is going to harm the economic interests of the both countries. So they go with peace treaties. That was the only principle. They say that if you want to use hard power post the Cold War and in a complex interdependence world, it is very difficult. Same thing applies to India-China relations. Though there are many problems between India and China in the form of land disputes, definitely still we are not going to wars. The only reason is this complex interdependence. We are dependent on China. China is dependent on India in economic terms. So obviously, in these type of economic scenarios, no country goes for a situation of war, particularly nuclear war, because nuclear war is one thing which acts as deterrence. So they say that it was redundant. The use of hard power is redundant today. So go for soft power. That is why he recommends USA not to invest heavily on military weapons, rather invest in some other areas which can build USA's soft power and which can give the basic necessity so that it can be very sure of continuing its hegemony in the global order. That was his idea. Next, there was one man called Paul Kennedy. In his book, The Rise and Fall of Great Powers, I have given this book in the slide, right? Said that excessive use of hard power by USSR is responsible for collapse of USSR. He has studied the disintegration of USSR and he said that USSR has collapsed ultimately not because of USA or not because of the Western European countries. It has collapsed because internally USSR was not able to meet the challenges of the youth aspirations or the challenges of the younger generations, particularly in the terms of money or in the particularly in providing livelihood opportunities, employment, rising their standard of living. This was not done by USSR. So internally there was resentment, and USSR finally disintegrated in 1991 because USSR has focused more on building its military capabilities. So he said in The Rise and Fall of Great Powers, he said that great powers rise, but ultimately they fall only because they focus entirely on military power, and USSR was the best example. This is as per Paul Kennedy. Joseph Nye uses his theory also and says that USA should go for soft power. And there was one more man that we discussed, Richard Rosecrans, right? In functional theorem we discussed. He suggested that we should promote the idea of trading states. Sorry, we discussed him in economic interdependence. He promoted the idea of trading states. What is this trading states? States should see themselves not as militarily opposite countries but trading states. For example, initially after the First World War or Second World War, particularly after the First World War, Japan and Germany, they were military powers. They were military states. What happened after the end of the Second World War? They focused their energies on building up their economies. So, from military powers, they turned to be trading states. They are no more military states today, they are trading states. That is why, if you look at Germany, we talk about the industrial revolution, particularly the industrial base, MSME base that Germany has. If you look about, or if we talk about Japan, we talk about the technology and the progressing technology of Japan. So they converted themselves. So these men are arguing, Joseph Nye and Robert Kiyosaki, particularly Joseph Nye is arguing that it is complex interdependence theory. Look at Paul Kennedy's theory also. He's also saying the same thing. And this man called Richard Rosecrans also saying that you have to have a trading state rather than going for militaristic power. So what is Joseph Nye concept? Joseph Nye also criticized, if you look at the rise of China and the decline of USA's hegemony, this is just because the Republicans of USA, such as George Bush, they focused on military expansion or military power. So he said that Republicans, unlike Democrats of USA, in USA there are two parties, Democrats and Republicans. So Republicans of USA are responsible for the loss of hegemony of USA. Why they say? Especially George Bush during his term, he waged two wars in South or in West Asia. Believes that George Bush regime is responsible for decline of USA's hegemony. Why? He started two military wars in USA after the Cold War, because it was in 2001 he entered into Afghanistan. In 2021 they are retreating. It means USA was literally present on West Asia for 20 years. Literally for 20 years they stayed there. And in Iraq also they are present even today. Which means for 20 years the policies which was adapted by George Bush way back in 2001 after the end of the Cold War is responsible for the decline of USA's hegemony. So USA overstretched its militarily, and it overinvested in military. As a result, it harmed economic interests of the country, of USA particularly. And this gave the opportunity of China. China consolidated its economic base, and it gave rise to a new thing called, sorry, it gave rise to China to counter or challenge the hegemony of USA. So soft power as such, he said that USA should pursue, should change its stand from military power to or hard power or the arms race to soft power. That was the concept of Joseph Nye, and that was the concept of soft power. I think it is very clear. Hard power, soft power. Soft power, I said Gramsci, then Joseph Nye. Joseph Nye, why he said that relevance of hard power post Cold War is very, very little. He has taken his own book as example, his son Robert Keohans, and then Paul Kennedy's book, and then he has also taken the example of Richard Roscrone's trading states, and he also gave a classical example saying that if there is one factor which declined, which was responsible for the decline of US's hegemony and the rise of China over after the post-Cold War, definitely it was the policies that was made during the regime of George Bush. Because George Bush, after the end of Cold War, he has started two wars, military wars in West Asia in 2001 and in 2003 in Afghanistan and Iraq respectively. Today, after 20 years, uh, still USA is still facing the economic or economic crisis, or particularly the economic military expenditure that is given from the major share of economy. So it has hurt the economy of USA, and it has given or consolidated uh, China, particularly after the post-Cold War. So that was the concept of soft power. Later, he has also come out with one more term called smart power. Joseph Knight termed this as smart power. What is smart power? I said you should have soft power, you should have hard power, you should know when to use what. So that is called smart power. This I discussed. So it is the combination of hard and soft power. So the smart power was reiterated by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. These are the Democrats, unlike George Bush, who was a Republican and who waged militarily. So they believed that okay, hard power is necessary and smart power is necessary. If you look at the elimination of Bin Laden, then that was a clear example of use of hard power of USA. But if you look at the smart power, as far as soft power is concerned, the economic interdependence that USA has made with India and some other countries definitely shows that they are moving towards, they are having a combination of soft and smart powers, particularly during the time of Obama. So this was the concept of smart power. As a neoliberal, Joseph Nye realized that soft power alone doesn't work. He realized after a few years, he realized that okay, soft power doesn't alone work because there are certain limitations of soft power. As there are certain limitations, if there are certain limitations in hard power, there are certain limitations in soft power too. So both powers, that is soft power and hard power, it has their advantages and they have their limitations. Now you look at what Joseph Nye says. What are the limitations of hard power? He says that the limitations are it is very resource intensive, it captures your resources, and it is going to make a hell use of your resources altogether. It is not necessary that hard power always gives you success. Look at US's war in Afghanistan. Even after 20 years, it has not achieved anything, and it is withdrawing with empty hands after 20 years in Afghanistan. Finally, what it happened, it is very iron, they started waging a war saying that we have to eliminate Taliban. Today they are at a table sitting with the Taliban and discussing. So what is the use of spending this much amount and this much amount of resources? So it doesn't guarantee you success in the end. So if you look, for example, he says USA using cardboard in Afghanistan or USA using military power in Afghanistan. It is not successful. In Vietnam, it is not successful. In Iraq, it is not successful. In Syria, it is not successful. So what is the use of spending so much resources? That was the question which Joseph Nye raised, and that is the limitation of hard power. The use of hard power generates ill will. This is an added extra disadvantage that the country is going to get. Whenever a country is waging war, it gives an impact on the other country, saying that okay, this is trying to assert its power. We have to be careful. So it doesn't generate goodwill, rather it generates ill will. So that these are the limitations of hard power. So what is it is resource incentive, it doesn't guarantee you success. At the same time, it brings you a lot of ill will. And there are also certain limitations of soft power too. What are those soft power? Soft power takes a very long time to build. It is not like overnight like military power, which takes very short span of time, say for example 10 years or 15 years. Soft power is going to take you years after years, say 30 years, 40 years. It takes a very long period of time. And particularly, how can we build soft power? We can build soft power only on the institution's capability. that is by forming democratic institutions or forming civil society organizations, or forming NGOs. These are the elements that are very vital for soft power. So it is built by institutions of civil society, and whenever it is required, it cannot be challenged. If you want to channelize at the required time, then definitely you cannot channelize. When there is war, soft power cannot be channelized or mobilized very easily like your military can be called at any point of time, at any point at any time in a day. But soft power, it cannot be channelized because these are the institutions, these are civil societies, they take time to respond, unlike the military operations which will be very agile in their operations. So I hope this is the difference. Soft power cannot compel the other states. Like if you are keeping a gun uh, at the tempo of the, or at the, if you are making the person to come at the gunpoint, and if you are asking him whether you accept it or not, then that is going to give you result. But soft power, it is like, okay, you do it. It doesn't compel. It is like passing the ball into others court. You are passing the other ball into other courts and you are waiting for his response. Okay, you respond boss with your positivity. So that is the limitations of soft power. Joseph Nye observed, okay, as there are certain limitations of hard power, there are certain limitations of soft power too. So what is the solution? He says that yes, you go for smart power. That is what exactly what was propounded by Joseph Nye, and that is what exactly what was done by Mr. Obama and Hillary Clinton. Also, this is the smart power. In the end, both will fail in some situations, so smart power is required. Now, according to Joseph Nye, still Joseph Nye says if you want to choose between hard power and soft power, better to choose soft power again because it is less intensive and it draws less opposition to you. Right? Yes, opposition will be there for hard power. For hard power, it will have opposition. So it will have less opposition if you are going with soft power. That is what the theme is about smart power. I said hard, soft, smart. Now look at one more power called sharp power. This is the fourth power. As far as sharp power is considered, Joseph Nye he has again propounded a theory called soft power. Not theory, he has come out with the concept of sharp power. What is sharp power? It is the power of propaganda. Joseph Nye said that soft power is the power which was used by Democrats, or soft power is a power of democracy, right? Because it involves forming institutions, it involves cultural relations, it involves civil societies, it involves NGOs. So soft power is a power of democracy. But sharp power, it is a power of authoritative states. The sharp power was used by authoritative states like China and Russia. So in order to describe what type of power these countries are used, or authoritarian states are using, he comes with a term called soft power. And what he says, in order to undermine the soft power of the Western world, China and Russia are using this term called sharp power. So in order to undermine soft power, these countries has come, authoritative countries like Russia and China, they have come out with a term called sharp power. So this is to say how, what type of power is with the authoritarian states. That's it. So Russia, for example, he gives examples. Russia is interfered into the US's elections, particularly when Trump was elected. So next, questioning the credibility of US's democracy. Time and again, Russia questions the credibility of democracy, and China also does the same thing. China also uses the same propaganda weapon against USA, and particularly after the elections, China has not immediately recognized the presidentship of Joe Biden. So this is like questioning the democracy of the West. Through this means these countries, Russia and China, are questioning the soft power, which is an democratic power, through their sharp power, which are an authoritative power. So remember this: soft power is democratic power, sharp power is authoritative power. So these are the four powers so far we discussed. Let us move to the last and final concept, or last type of power, that is fast power. So the concept of fast power is, this is an emerging power, or it is a different type of power which has emerged post 2020 to 2010, or particularly 2015 or 2016. Sharp power has become the determinant of power today. I said, what is the determinant? Determinant is your potential to convert your resources to use, is called soft power. Today, speed is the determinant, right? If you want to crack UPSC, then definitely speed is going to be the vital thing. Either it is in prelims or main, speed is the determinant of your success. So speed is the determinant of power in international politics. And the growth rate of China can be considered as the best example. Why China was considered as a rising power or a superpower today? The reason is because of its fastness and because of its fastness and sharpness. So we consider China as a growing power or superpower, and it is challenging the hegemony. So this can be said speed is the determinant of power. And today's rule is not just survival of fittest. Survival of fittest was old rule. Today, survival of fittest, yes, you have to be survival, you have to be fit to survive, but at the same time, what is more important is survival of the fastest is the rule. So survival of fastest is the rule today. How fast you are reading your books, how fast you are completing your current affairs, how fast you are revising is what is the speed, or it is what is going to determine your capability to clear this exam. So is the state's capability to influence other states. So today the concept has moved from survival of fittest to survival of fastest. How fast can you adapt to a situation, to the changing conditions, is called determines your power. And how fast you are flexible, how more you are flexible, how fast you are adaptable. These are the two things that determines fast power. Capability or the flexibility and adaptability. Flexibility and adaptability are the two terms which determines your power. So I think so far we have discussed, and you are very clear what I discussed. I have discussed what are the types of power. I discussed 5 types of power: the hard power, the soft power, the smart power, a combination of hard and smart, soft, right? Then I discussed a counter to this soft called sharp power, authoritative power, and then there is one more concept called fast power, which I discussed. So these are the types of powers which we discussed. So if you look at the concept, how we are trending, or how you are, how I am telling you the concept. First I said the concept of power, though it is a central theme, it is the most contested. Different schools, how they pursued power, and then I have come out with what are the elements of power. I have come out with what are the elements, and then I said what are the determinants of power, and then I said what are the types of power. So this is what we have come so far. Next, look at what is, there is one more thing called capability. This we discussed when we are discussing the Kenneth Walls defensive realism. Kenneth Walls, if you remember, he has clearly said that in international relations, every state has only one objective, that is security maximization. Uh, Remember this: security maximization is the end goal of all the states in international politics, as per Kenneth Walls' realism, that is called defensive realism. So Kenneth Walls clearly said at that point of time, he said that every state has only one concept, that is to secure its national interest, or to secure its borders. So he said that in international relations, all states have similar functions. I said that there is no functional differentiation among the states. Kenneth Walls famously said that there is no functional differentiation among the states in international politics. All the states aspire only with only one function, that is their security. They look for security of their nations. That is the this, hence there is no functional differentiation. Security maximizers. Every state is a security maximizer in international relations. This was said by Kenneth Walls. If there is only one difference between the states in international politics, as per Kenneth Walls, it is the capacity of the state to secure your national interest, right? I said collective security, sorry, I said security is the, every state, as per Kenneth Walls, states are security maximizers. Remember this. Margento said states are power maximizers. Power is the means and power is the end for Margento. For John Mayer Schimmer, power is the means, power is the end. But for Kenneth Walls, power is the means, security is the end. States are security maximizers as per Kenneth Walls. But as per these two theories, uh, power is the Power maximizers. States are power maximizers. As per Kenneth Walls, states are security maximizers. Three are realists. Morgenthau, this person called John Mearsheimer, and Kenneth Walls. All three are realists. Classical realists, neo-realists. And in these neo-realists, John Mearsheimer offensive, Kenneth Walls defensive. There is one more person called E.H. Carr. He is also a classical liberal, realist. Remember all these topics because everything is related here. That is why I said theories are important to understand this. So concept of capability. What he said, there is no functional differentiation among the states in international politics. If there is only one difference, then that difference is the capability of the states. So he suggests that states differ only in terms of their capability. How you are going to determine that capability? What is this capability? Capability means the amount of power a country possesses, right? So what is that amount of power? Amount of elements of power. What are the elements? Remember now. Elements, I said territory, leadership, military power, technological power. I said, right? Technological power, territory, location of your geography, ideology or the laws that is operating in the country. So these are all the elements of power. So they had certain amount of elements of power, and capability is determined by the amount of power a country possesses. What is this amount of power? This is called the elements that a country has. So as per Kenneth Walls, this is the concept of Kenneth Walls. So Kenneth Walls says that, based on this theory, that is called based on the amount of power a country possesses, you can classify the countries into different powers. So Kenneth Walls, remember again, I am repeating. Kenneth Walls said that there is no functional differentiation of states in the international politics. Every state has only one objective, that is security maximization. Hence, states are security maximizers as per Kenneth Walls. Now he said that as there is no functional differentiation in the states of states in the international politics, there is no functional differentiation. If there is one difference among all the states that is not the function but the capacity of the states to protect themselves. What is that capacity? The capacity is called power. So states differ in terms of power. That was what Kenneth Walls said, right? There is no difference. Every power has only one function, that is security maximization. Whether it is superpower, great power, middle power, or small power, whatever power you take, they have same function, that is security maximization. This is what he said. But in order to protect this security maximization, in order to have this security, how much amount of power they possess, then they differ in this amount of power. So states in international politics can be classified into 4 types based on the amount of power that they possess as per Kenneth Walls. This is called the capability. What is your capability? Capability is determined on the amount of power. Capability is amount of power, right? Based on the capability, states are classified into these types. That is what the concept is. So categories of states as per power. On the basis of capabilities, we can categorize countries. That is by measuring the amount of power. Countries are categorized into 4 types. That is great superpowers, great powers, middle powers, small powers. Why I am telling you all this? We have to use corrective term while we are writing an answer in international relations. As far as the subject goes, we have to use this technical terms. If you are referring to Cold War, then you have to use the term called superpower. There are 2 superpowers at that time, USA and USSR. If you are referring to Cold War era, if you are referring to today's era, then definitely you can tell like Russia is not a superpower, China is a superpower. So based on the context of space and time, you are going to use these words, and this usage shows your capability of understanding the subject to the examiner. I hope you got the point. So this is very important. How the states are classified? This is superpowers, great powers. Now the movement. How we can classify? What are superpowers? Those powers who have extraordinary powers, they have extraordinary powers, right? Extraordinary powerful. It means other countries, even in combinations, cannot challenge this superpower. You form alliances, but still you cannot be able to defeat the superpower. So superpower on one side and all the countries on other side. It is like Rajnikant and rest of the people in the film, right? Rajnikant is superpower. Consider Rajnikant and the rest of the countries. So it means all countries put together, you cannot defeat the superpowers. So what were the examples of superpowers? Superpowers existed during the time of Cold War. There are two superpowers at that point of time, USA and USSR, right? These were the two blocks, right? Even so, superpowers, extraordinary power, even all the countries in combination, they cannot defeat the superpowers. What are great powers? Great powers are those countries which can protect their national interest on their own. They don't depend on other countries, though they do not have the capability to challenge or capability to face combination. Still, they have a minimum capability to defend themselves. They are able to defend. If they are not going to wage war or going to win the war, no, they are not going. Superpowers has that capability. If they wage war, then definitely they can win. But great powers, they have not. They do not have capability to win, but they can protect their national interest or territorial interest by themselves without depending on other countries. For example, China is best example. What are middle powers? Middle powers, they do not have that amount of power to defend themselves. They are dependent on other countries for their protection. Middle powers can protect their national interests only in combination of other countries. Say for example India. India cannot counter China on its own. It has to depend on other countries. That is why it is forming alliances or entering into alliances like Quad. This we discussed. Like Pakistan, it cannot have its own security. That is why it always backs with China whenever it wants to have a dialogue with India, right? Australia, yes, Australia, India, all these two countries are middle powers. Again, Australia, Quad is example. One of the member of Quad is Australia, right? So these are middle powers, and there are certain powers called small powers. Actually, small powers is no power. They do not have any power. But in order to give respect to these countries, we use okay small powers. Let us say rather than saying that okay these fellows they do not have any power, they are chiller parties. Rather than saying the word chiller party, we use the term called smart powers, small powers. Sorry. So they do not have any power in original terms, but the name is given out of respect. For example, Nepal, Bhutan, we consider them as small powers in international relations because they do not have any power. So remember, whenever we are writing the answer, we have to have this classification, and how this classification was done based on the amount of power that these countries possess: great powers, middle powers, small powers, superpowers, right? This is what the category of the powers is. So friends, this is the basic concepts of power. In the next class we will be looking at the polarity thesis and balance of power and collective security. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. In this class, remember what I said again. So what I said, first thing is we discussed about power, meaning of power, right? Whatever I discussed, I am going to tell you again. Just a quick revision. I have said about power. In power, I said what is the meaning of power? Power is the central idea, yet it is contested topic because realists say in one perspective, liberals say in one perspective, Marxists say in one perspective, critical schools say in one perspective. So critical schools, again, what are those critical schools? Frankfurt School, this we discussed, feminist school, social constructivist school, and then there is one more critical school, Frankfurt School, Feminist School, Social Constructivist School, Postmodernist School. These are critical schools. So every school has their own definition on power. So this is the most contested topic in international relations. After that, I said what are the elements of power, and then how far that elements can be materialized. That can be said as a determinant, how far your elements are going to determine your power, determinants of power. After that, I discussed what are the types of power. In that, I discussed what are five things. What is hard power and what is soft power? As far as soft power is discussed, I went into certain depth and Joseph Nye's concept, right? And Joseph Nye, and he has taken the examples of him and Robert Keogh handbook, and then he has also taken the example of Paul Kennedy, and then he has also taken the example of Robert Rosecrans. After soft power, together combinedly, I said there is one power called smart power, right? Then there is one more power called sharp power, the authoritative power as per the power this man called um, Joseph Nye, and then last power is fast power. After this, I discussed capability of Kenneth Walls. What Kenneth Walls said, capability. Kenneth Walls said that every state in international relations is capable of, every state in international politics has certain capability. Uh, there is no functional differentiation, but the differentiation is only in capability. Based on the capability, you are going to divide the countries into four powers, that is called superpowers. Either the country may be a superpower, or the countries may be great powers, or they may be middle powers, or they may be small powers. What are great powers? Small powers. What are superpowers? These countries are so super that even if other countries are going to wage a war combinedly, they cannot defeat this superpower. What are great powers? They are the powers who can defend their national interest upon national interest by themselves without depending on others. Middle powers are those powers which can depend, which depends on other countries for their defense. Small powers are no powers, but out of a respect to these countries, we have used this term. So friends, this is what we discussed. I think the topic is very clear. In the next class, as I said, we will be discussing with, as I said, we will be discussing with the next topic. We'll be continuing with power as such. So this is what all we discussed. I said meaning of power, right? Types of power, I discussed determinants of power, elements of power, concepts of power. So this is what all we discussed. Concepts I discussed elements, determinants, measurement of power. I have also discussed types. So we are left with polarity and management of power. In management, there is balance of power and collective security. So balance of power and collective security and polarity thesis is one thing that we are left, that we will be discussing in the coming class. So this is the sixth unit of paper 2 section A. So this is power, and then from power we will be moving to balance of power, and we will be moving to collective security. These two, balance of power and collective security, they are related to management of power. I think you are getting the point how they are related. UPSC has given in this way, but if you want to reorganize the syllabus, you can reorganize. In power there is one concept called management of power. In that management you will use balance of power and collective security. This is what we are discussing: power, balance of power, collective security. After that we will go to next topic, that is called deterrence, and then we will move to collective security, national interest, and transnational actors on this one. So this is what the topic is for today. This is what I discussed: power and interdependence of Robert Keohane and Joseph Nye. Remember the books: Paul Kennedy, The Rise and Fall of Great Powers, and Joseph Nye, Soft Power. Hence, this is what today's topic is. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Let us meet in the next slide or in the next class very soon.